It's been 20 years since the morgue where I work has seen a body that didn't have an ID on it. That was until the morning of January 15th, when our team received a call from the emergency room to come and collect a body for autopsy. The paramedics had arrived at the scene and were waiting for us by the entrance, their faces pale and worried. I remember feeling a sense of unease as we walked towards them, but I pushed it aside as mere paranoia. After all, we'd seen our fair share of unidentified bodies over the years. This one would be just another case to file away. The body itself was female, dressed in tattered jeans and a faded black tank top. She looked like she had been through hell. No ID, no medical history, no family waiting for her. Just a young woman, barely out of her 20s, who had met an untimely demise. As I began to examine the body, my mind started to wander to all the questions that needed answering. Who was this girl? What had happened to her? And why did she look so different? The eyes, in particular, seemed to be staring at me, drawing me in with an unsettling intensity. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But as I continued to work, I couldn't shake the sense that something was off about this body, something that went beyond the ordinary. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, interviews, and endless questions. Our team worked tirelessly to piece together the girl's identity, but every lead seemed to end in a dead end. No ID, no phone records, no family members who claimed her as their own. It was as if she had never existed at all. The only clue we had was a small tattoo on her left ankle, a delicate, hand-drawn design of a crescent moon with an arrow pointing towards the top. I remembered feeling a shiver run down my spine as I gazed upon it, something about it seeming otherworldly. Our lead detective, Rachel, was equally perplexed by the lack of information. She spent hours poring over old case files, searching for any mention of similar unidentified bodies, but found nothing. The only sound in the morgue that day was the soft hum of the refrigeration units and the occasional rustle of papers being shuffled through. It was a quiet, eerie atmosphere that seemed to seep into my bones. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something, some crucial piece of evidence that would unlock the secrets of this girl's death. And then, there were the strange occurrences. Equipment would go missing or turn up in strange places, and some of the staff reported hearing faint whispers in the dead of night. At first, I wrote it off as mere paranoia, but as the days went by, the incidents grew more frequent and more intense. As the days turned into weeks, our team began to experience more and more unexplained occurrences. The whispers in the dead of night grew louder, and some of the staff reported seeing shadowy figures lurking around the morgue's corridors. I started to feel a creeping sense of dread that seemed to seep into every aspect of my work. One evening, as I was closing up shop, I noticed that one of our newer technicians, Alex, was acting strangely. He was usually a quiet, reserved guy, but tonight he seemed off. His eyes had this glassy, far-off look, and his movements were stiff and jerky. I tried to brush it off as fatigue, but as I watched him scrub down the counters with an unsettling intensity, I felt a chill run down my spine. He suddenly spun around, his eyes locking onto mine with an unnerving stare. "She's trying to tell us something," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the refrigeration units. "The girl, she's trying to warn us." I was taken aback by his words, but a part of me knew that Alex had been acting strangely for weeks now. His behavior was becoming increasingly erratic, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was driving him to this point. "What are you talking about?" I asked him, trying to keep my voice steady, but he just shook his head, his eyes darting nervously around the room before returning to me with an unsettling intensity. "The girl, she knows." As the days went by, our team encountered more and more maintenance issues with the morgue's equipment. The refrigeration units were malfunctioning, causing the bodies to warm up at an alarming rate. We had to work around the clock to keep them cool, but it was a losing battle. One of the autopsy tables began to wobble ominously, as if it was being manipulated by an unseen force. I remember feeling a sense of unease as I watched our lead technician, Dr. Lee, try to secure it with screws and tape. But no matter how hard he tried, the table seemed to be adjusting itself. It was as if something was trying to shift the weight off its surface, but we couldn't figure out what. The whispers had grown louder now, and some of the staff were starting to hear them too. They would whisper to each other in huddles during breaks, their voices barely above a whisper. "Did you hear that?" they'd ask, their eyes darting nervously around the room. The girl's voice. It was as if we were all waiting for something to happen, but no one knew what. And then there were the photographs. We started finding them in strange places on the floor, on the walls, even inside the morgue itself. They were always of a young woman with an uncanny resemblance to our unidentified body. The faces were always different, but the eyes seemed to be watching us. As the days went by, our team encountered more and more unexplained equipment malfunctions. The X-ray machine would turn on by itself, displaying images of empty space or strange symbols that made no sense. The CT scanner would get stuck on repeat, showing us the same scan over and over again. It was as if the machines were trying to tell us something, but we couldn't decipher the message. One night, I was working late in the morgue when I heard a loud bang coming from the back room. I rushed in to find that one of our autopsy tables had been knocked over, its contents scattered all over the floor. But what really caught my attention was the piece of paper that was lying next to it. It was a note, scrawled in red ink. "She's not alone." I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that someone or something had been in the morgue while I was working. The note seemed to be watching me, daring me to ignore it, but I knew I couldn't just leave it there. I picked it up and examined it more closely. The ink seemed to be smearing itself as if it was being erased by some unseen force. And then I saw it, a small symbol etched into the corner of the page. It looked like a crescent moon, but with an arrow pointing towards the bottom, the same symbol that was on our unidentified body's ankle. As the strange occurrences continued, our team started to receive witness accounts from other staff members who had heard mysterious noises coming from the morgue. Some said they heard whispers in the dead of night, while others reported hearing the sound of footsteps echoing through the corridors. One of our nurses, Sarah, came forward with a particularly chilling account. She claimed that she had been working late one evening when she heard a faint whispering in the morgue's ventilation system. The words were indistinguishable, but the tone was unmistakable. It was a soft, mournful sighing that seemed to be coming from all around her. Sarah tried to shake off the feeling of unease, telling herself it was just the wind or her imagination playing tricks on her. But as she continued to work, the whispers grew louder and more urgent. She began to feel like she was being watched, and the sensation only intensified when she finally left the morgue for the day. As she walked back to her locker, Sarah felt a cold breeze brush against the back of her neck. She spun around, but there was no one there. The whispers seemed to be coming from all directions now, and they were getting louder by the minute. When Sarah finally made it back to her desk, she collapsed into her chair, exhausted and shaken. "I don't know what's going on," she told me, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I know one thing, we're not alone in this building." It was one of our shifts at night when things took a turn for the worse. Our team had been working diligently to keep up with the demand of autopsies and preparing bodies for burial. As we were finishing up the last case, I heard a faint noise coming from the morgue storage room. At first, I thought it was just the wind or our imagination playing tricks on us, but as the sound grew louder, I realized that someone or something had entered the room. I rushed to the door and tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. The handle felt like ice in my hand. I called out for backup, but no one came. The noise was getting closer now, and I could feel a presence in the room with me. Suddenly, the storage room door swung open and a figure stumbled into view. It was our unidentified body, or at least what was left of it. Its eyes were black as coal and its skin was stretched taut over its skull. The corpse lurched forward, its arms outstretched like a puppet on a string. I froze in terror, unable to move or speak. The figure began to move towards me, its pace slow and deliberate. I knew that if it touched me, I would be consumed by some unseen force. I tried to run, but my legs were rooted to the spot. Just as the corpse was about to reach out and grab me, everything went black. As the days passed, our team began to notice a strange trend in the autopsy reports. It seemed that every time we performed an autopsy on one of our unidentified bodies, something off would happen. The organs wouldn't be where they were supposed to be, or the tissue wouldn't match up with what was expected. At first, we thought it was just an anomaly, a one-time fluke. But as it kept happening, we started to suspect that something more sinister was at play. We found evidence of anomalous autopsies in every department the medical examiners report, the pathology slides, even the patient's medical history. It was as if our bodies were being altered in some fundamental way before they ever reached us. One of our pathologists, Dr. Lee, came forward with a particularly disturbing discovery. She had been working on one of the unidentified cases, and when she examined the organs, she found something that made her blood run cold. The liver was missing, replaced by a mass of gray, pulpy tissue. Dr. Lee couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't human. We were all starting to suspect that our bodies weren't what they seemed, that we were somehow altered before we even came into this world. And then we found the first body bag with no face. It was as if someone had taken a mask off a corpse and left it in its place. But when we looked closer, we realized that the face wasn't just missing, it was gone. It was as if the person inside was not who they claimed to be. As we delved deeper into the mystery, we began to uncover clues that suggested our bodies were not of this world. Clues that suggested we were not even human. And then we found the last body bag with no face, the one with the message scrawled on it in red ink. They're waiting for you. As we delved deeper into the mystery, we began to notice a strange pattern of ritualistic symbolism in our autopsy reports. The symbols were always small, almost imperceptible, but they seemed to be linked to each individual case. We found a crescent moon symbol on one body's ankle, a pentagram on another's chest, and a series of intricate hieroglyphics on a third's forehead. It was as if our bodies were being marked with some sort of arcane signature, one that held the key to unlocking the truth behind these bizarre occurrences. Dr. Lee, our lead pathologist, spent countless hours studying the symbols, trying to decipher their meaning. She discovered that each symbol corresponded to a specific aspect of human anatomy. The crescent moon represented the lunar cycle, the pentagram represented the balance of elements, and the hieroglyphics represented the secrets of the human psyche. As she continued her research, Dr. Lee began to uncover a dark history behind these symbols. She discovered that they were linked to an ancient cult that worshipped the power of the dead. The cult believed that by performing rituals on the bodies of the deceased, they could unlock the secrets of life and death itself. And now, It seemed that we were being drawn into their twisted game. We knew that we had to get to the bottom of this mystery before it was too late. But as we delved deeper into the heart of the cult's secrets, we realized that we were playing with forces beyond our control. The symbols on our bodies seemed to be changing, shifting, and rearranging themselves in a way that defied logic. It was as if they were trying to tell us something, but what? And then we received a message from an unknown sender. "The ritual begins soon," it read. "Are you ready?" As the days passed, I found myself becoming increasingly obsessed with the case. I spent every waking moment researching, interviewing witnesses, and poring over evidence. But the more I delved into the mystery, the more it seemed to unravel before me. The symbols on the bodies continued to shift and change, making it impossible for me to decipher their meaning. The messages from the unknown sender grew more cryptic, taunting me with clues that led nowhere. And then there were the dreams. I would find myself standing in a dark, deserted corridor, surrounded by rows of identical doors. Each door had a name on it, my own name, my colleagues' names, even the names of the deceased. The whispers started as a gentle hum, but soon grew to a deafening cacophony, screaming out in unison, "You will never find the truth." I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew better. Something was wrong, something that threatened to consume me whole. And then, one night, I received a phone call from an unknown number. "Meet me at the old warehouse at midnight," a voice growled. "Come alone." I hesitated for a moment, my mind racing with fear and excitement, but something compelled me to answer the call. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was desperation. Whatever the reason, I knew that I had to see this through. As I walked into the warehouse, the darkness seemed to swallow me whole. And in the center of the room, standing before me like a specter, was myself. As I stood before my doppelganger, I felt a sense of unease wash over me. The entity's eyes seemed to bore into my soul, as if searching for something hidden deep within. I tried to speak, but my voice was frozen in my throat. The entity took a step closer, its presence filling the room with an unspeakable horror. I saw myself, but not really. It was like looking into a funhouse mirror, where everything was distorted and twisted. The entity began to laugh, a sound that was both familiar and yet completely alien. It was as if it knew me better than I knew myself. Slowly, the entity reached out and touched my face. I felt a jolt of electricity run through my body, and suddenly I was flooded with memories, not my own memories, but those of the dead. I saw the faces of the victims, their eyes filled with a deep sadness and longing. The entity was showing me the truth, that we were all just pawns in a much larger game, that our lives were mere ripples on the surface of a vast, uncaring universe. And then, the entity spoke to me in a voice that was both my own and yet completely foreign. "You have been chosen," it said, "chosen to play a part in this grand dance. You will be the instrument through which the dead communicate with the living." I felt a sense of horror wash over me, but also a thrill of excitement. I knew that I had to accept this fate, no matter how dire it seemed. The entity vanished as suddenly as it appeared, leaving me standing alone in the darkness. But I knew that I was not alone. I could feel the presence of the dead all around me, watching and waiting. And I knew that my journey was just beginning. I woke up to the sound of my own screams. I was lying on a cold, hard floor with no memory of how I got there. As I struggled to sit up, I saw that I was in a room filled with rows and rows of identical doors. Each door had a name on it, my own name, my colleagues' names, even the names of the deceased. The whispers started as a gentle hum, but soon grew to a deafening cacophony, screaming out in unison, "You will never wake up." I tried to stand, but my legs felt like lead. I stumbled and fell back onto the floor, my head spinning with dizziness. And then I saw it, a door with a name on it that I didn't recognize. It was a name that seemed familiar yet completely foreign. "Who are you?" I screamed, but my voice was drowned out by the whispers. The door creaked open and a figure stepped out. It was me, or at least, a version of me from another dimension. "Welcome to your own personal hell," it said, with a smile that was both twisted and familiar. "You'll be here forever." And then everything went black. When I came to, I was back in the same room, facing the same door. The whispers had stopped and an eerie silence filled the air. I knew that I had to keep trying, no matter how hopeless it seemed. But as I stood up and approached the door, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My own face stared back at me from the other side of the glass. And then, everything went black again.